of England is putting out statements. And yet, in our country, we have not had that reckoning. People in power, whether they're in government, whether they're in finance, whether they're in technology, if they have been implicated in the files in morally embarrassing ways and in ways that shock the conscience, should be held accountable. And it should be regardless of party.
So you're calling for Howard Lutnick to resign?
I believe that Lutnick, at the very least, needs to be brought before Congress. I think, based on the evidence, he should be out of the cabinet. But, you know, I mean, people say, oh, you're just a Democrat saying that. No, I mean, look at what he is, how much influence he had with Epstein, and he wasn't transparent about it. But again, it's not about Lutnick, and it's not about any particular person. In this country, we have to make a decision. Are we going to allow rich and powerful people who were friends and no problem doing business and showing up with a pedophile who was raping underage girls? Are we just going to allow them to skate? Or like other countries, are we going to have elite accountability and have accountability for the people who did that? Most Americans believe we need accountability.
Can you confirm that President Trump wasn't on this list?
No, I didn't see him on that.
And we'll continue to follow the top headlines here on Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. We're back. Welcome back into Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Representative Hakeem Jeffries discusses DHS funding and also the Save America Act.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Notwithstanding what Donald Trump continues to say, the affordability crisis in America is very real. It is a clear and present danger to the economic well-being of working-class Americans, middle-class Americans, and everyday Americans. Donald Trump and Republicans have failed the country when it comes to the economy. Republicans promised that they were going to lower the high cost of living on day one of Donald Trump's presidency. But costs haven't gone down in the United States of America. Costs have gone up under failed Republican policies. Housing costs are out of control. Grocery costs are out of control. Healthcare costs are out of control. Utility bills are out of control. And child care costs are out of control. The affordability crisis in the United States of America is very real. Republicans have failed to lower the high cost of living. And as a result of the Trump tariffs, costs are going up by thousands of dollars per year on everyday Americans. Democrats remain committed to driving down the high cost of living, to fixing our broken healthcare system, and to ensuring that we have immigration enforcement policies in this country that are fair, just, and humane. Republicans have failed America on affordability, on health care, on immigration enforcement, and they have failed to make life better for the American people. Questions?
Thank you. It's looking increasingly likely that there might need to be some sort of short-term stopgap for DHS with the deadline approaching at the end of the week and no agreement in place yet. I'm just curious if there's any chance you would vote for or allow your members to vote for a short-term CR to do a clean extension of DHS just to give more time for negotiations to take place.
ICE is out of control right now. The American people know it, and ICE clearly needs to be reined in. Taxpayer dollars should be used to make life more affordable for everyday Americans, not brutalize and kill American citizens. Our position has been clear. Dramatic changes are needed at the Department of Homeland Security before a DHS funding bill moves forward. Period. Full stop.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. As these negotiations are happening, the Homeland Security Committee will hold an oversight hearing tomorrow where they'll hear from the heads of ICE, CBP, and USCIS. What do you think the heads of these agencies need to say to the American people to, communicate that they understand the gravity of your demands, the gravity of the moment? You all say that ICE needs to be reined in. You have very, very obvious concerns about what's happening in terms of the president's immigration policies. What do you need to hear from some of his administration officials tomorrow at this hearing to let you know that your message is getting through, at least to the administration?
Donald Trump and the administration promised that their immigration enforcement policies were going to target violent felons. They lied to the American people. The Trump administration is not targeting violent felons. They're targeting American citizens, communities throughout this country, and law-abiding immigrant families. The American people know that ICE is completely and totally out of control. They've gone too far and need to be reined in. At the hearing this week, Trump administration officials should apologize to the American people for using their taxpayer dollars to unleash wicked brutality on the American people, and in some cases, kill them in cold blood, like Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. The administration also needs to commit to the dramatic changes that Democrats have forcefully put on the table, including but not limited to mandatory body cameras, judicial warrant requirements, no masks, an end to roving patrols that are brutalizing American communities, no racial profiling, no targeting of sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, houses of worship, and polling sites, and independent investigations to ensure that when ICE officials break the law, state and local officials can investigate them and prosecute anyone who has committed a crime in the United States of America. House and Senate Democrats have clearly transmitted to the American people and clearly transmitted to the White House and our colleagues in the House and the Senate the types of dramatic changes that need to occur at the Department of Homeland Security before a funding bill moves forward this Friday, and we're still waiting to hear back from the White House, which shows to me that these extremists aren't serious about getting ICE under control.
Thanks, Mr. Leader. So now that the Epstein files are available at the Department of Justice, unredacted, Is there a strategy? Obviously, there are millions of files. Is there any coordination among Democrats for who is looking for what? And are you, or is anyone in leadership going to be taking advantage of that opportunity?
Well, on this matter, where the American people in general and the survivors in particular are seeking full accountability and full transparency, Robert Garcia and the Oversight Democrats, along with Jamie Raskin and the Judiciary Committee Democrats, will continue to take the lead. The lead will also continue to be taken by the Democratic Women's Caucus, led by Teresa Ledger Fernandez, who has worked closely with the Epstein survivors throughout this Congress and will continue to do so. Back.
Thanks, Senator Jeffries. The House voted unanimously to strip out that provision the Senate put into the appropriations package that would allow senators to sue the government over Jack Smith's investigation and get money back. There's now a hearing on with the telecom companies tomorrow in the Senate, and Lindsey Graham has said he's trying to get some version of this through the Senate in the future that would allow for a private cause of action by private groups who had their phone records similarly pulled. Is something like that entirely dead in the House of Representatives? Would you consider any sort of legislation like that might come out?
We'll have to take a look at any bipartisan proposal that relates to allowing everyday Americans to vindicate their rights under the law, if in fact those privacy rights have been violated. But the continuing temper tantrum being thrown by Lindsey Graham perplexes me. I don't get it. Like, there's enough corruption taking place coming out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now, the most corrupt administration in American history, Donald Trump and his sycophants running the largest pay-to-play scheme ever seen, focused on enriching themselves, their family members, and their friends, as opposed to actually addressing the affordability crisis or driving down the high cost of living. Republicans in the House and the Senate have shown no interest in dealing with the affordability crisis and no interest in fixing our broken healthcare system. I would suggest that John Thune and others actually pass the straightforward extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Focus on that so we can actually restore affordable health care for tens of millions of Americans who are right now facing dramatically increased health care premiums. In some cases, seeing their premiums increase by $1,000 or $2,000 per month. That's unacceptable here in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and Senate Republicans have done nothing about it. After House Democrats partnering with 17 House Republicans sent over a month ago a straightforward extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
Rosa DeLauro said she would support a funding bill that essentially funds every portion of DHS except for ICE and CBP. A, is that something you would support? And B, if it is, would that not be basically giving up all the rest of the leverage, given that the Big Beautiful Bill funded those two agencies for 4 years?
We don't look at the moment that we're in as exercising leverage over the other side. We want to fund the government in a manner that actually promotes the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people. The ball is in the Republicans' court right now. We sent over a proposal. We've given them legislative language as it relates to the types of dramatic reforms of DHS that the American people are demanding, and we've heard nothing but crickets from the other side. That says to me that Republicans are preparing to shut down the Coast Guard, shut down FEMA, and shut down TSA because they'd rather see that outcome than actually force ICE and other parts of DHS to conduct themselves like every other law enforcement agency in the country. That's what we're asking for at this point. Police officers don't wear masks. County sheriffs don't wear masks. State troopers don't wear masks. Why are Republicans committed to unleashing mass ICE or CBP agents on the streets of America to visit brutality on American citizens, while at the same time targeting law-abiding immigrant families? It's also completely and totally unhinged, unacceptable, and un-American. So this is on Republicans right now in terms of what happens on Friday. The clock is ticking. We'll sit down with anyone, anytime, any place. But our demands for dramatic ICE reform are clear. It's a line in the sand that we've drawn on behalf of the American people.
And coming up after the break, we'll take you out to hear the remaining. Welcome back into Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Let's quickly take you back out to hear the remainder of this event.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Kind of following up on that, you're saying that you haven't heard from Republicans and you also haven't heard from the White House. How confident are you that if there is a shutdown of DHS, you'll be able to reach a deal during that?
We've made clear to Republicans repeatedly throughout this Congress that we're not down with the my way or the highway approach. For some reason, these Republicans tried to convince all of us, the American people, that we were in the midst of some irreversible MAGA revolution, which none of us on the Democratic side of the House ever believed. Because the bottom line is, Republicans wouldn't even be in the majority in the House right now had they not stolen 3 seats from the people of North Carolina in mid-decade gerrymandering that occurred in 2024. They wouldn't even be in the majority right now. And yet they try to convince everybody that somehow the country was in the midst of a MAGA takeover, which nobody with any sense believes at this point, because Republicans continue to be destroyed electorally. Literally, Democrats since January of 2025 haven't lost a single competitive election. Every single state house seat, more than 25, that have been flipped in this country have been flipped by Democrats. Zip zero on the other side. In fact, most recently, everybody was stunned to see what happened in Texas. The district that Donald Trump had initially won in a state Senate seat by 17 points. And a Democrat wins by 14. That was a 31-point overperformance. Shocking to the country. But then I was amazed because I assumed that was the high watermark. A 31-point overperformance in a state Senate district in Texas that's larger than congressional districts until this weekend. In Louisiana, which just happens to be the home state of the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader. Presumably, ground zero of the MAGA movement. And yet, in a Louisiana State House seat, just on Saturday, that Donald Trump apparently won by 13 points in November of 2024. The Democratic candidate, wait for it, just won by 24 points in Louisiana, the heart of Mike Johnson and Steve Scalise territory. That was a 37-point overperformance, if my math is correct. This is stunning. It's over for these extremists. And so the notion that in the face of Republicans being rejected all across America and Democratic candidates up and down the ballot throughout the country being embraced, the notion that this week Republicans were going to proceed with a my way or the highway approach and act like they have the high ground on any issue, they do not. It's over for these people. Apparently, they're the only ones who haven't come to that conclusion.
I think that's a good segue to talk about the Save America Act. First of all, why are they doing this again? They already passed a version of it. What do you think they're doing with this, and how do you see it relating to Trump's talk about nationalizing elections?
Well, Donald Trump clearly wants to nationalize the election because he knows if there's a free and fair election, it's over. Right? The House is gone. Senate majority likely gone as well for these Republican extremists. Because the American people see, as Democrats, we're the only ones actually fighting hard on the issues that matter, to drive down the high cost of living, to fix our broken healthcare system, and to clean up corruption and the mess that Donald Trump and Republican policies have created. Republicans have adopted voter suppression as an electoral strategy. That's what the so-called SAVE Act is all about. And this version is worse than the last version. Because this version, as I understand it, would actually give DHS the power to get voting records from states across the country. Why would these extremists think that's a good idea that we as Democrats are going to accept at this moment in time? We want DHS and ICE, who have been brutally, viciously, and violently targeting everyday Americans, to have more data about the American people? It's outrageous. Something is really wrong with these folks. I think they're trying to lose elections at this point. They're a disaster. They failed. And so the only path forward, we've given a list of 10 demands. Those demands are completely consistent with the values of the American people. And we're waiting for a direct response from Donald Trump, the White House, and Republicans on Capitol Hill. And then we can have a debate, which we are ready to enthusiastically embrace on behalf of the American people. The so-called SAVE Act a version that's worse than the prior version is going down. It's not going to pass. If it squeaks.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us here at Live Now from Fox on this Tuesday. It is February 10th. My name is Karela Hara. I'm here with you throughout the next couple of hours, guiding you through the day's top stories, showcasing live events and live looks from around the world. We're going to start with just a little preview of what we have coming up for later on this Tuesday as I bring this live image of the Capitol building over in Washington, D.C. So as you can see here, the time right now is only 5:56 here on the East Coast, but later on today, we do have a jam-packed schedule of things that we are watching. 10 a.m. Eastern time, we do have a House hearing on ICE and border control. That's going to be happening in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And in fact, a lot of these events, at least here in this particular list, are all coming out of D.C. Also at 10 a.m. Eastern time, House Speaker Mike Johnson is going to be joined by Republican leaders on Capitol Hill to talk about, their weekly goals. This does come as a partial government shutdown is looming if a funding deal is not reached for the Department of Homeland Security. 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer will also be introducing Virginia's law. It's in honor of Epstein victims, and it comes as just yesterday, Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell did appear for a virtual deposition in front of lawmakers. She did plead the fifth the entire time while she was being questioned. And then later on this afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern time, a White House press briefing is going to be hosted by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. I do want to focus on immigration, border control, and also what we can expect when it comes to those remarks. Again, as I mentioned, Democratic leaders say a proposal from the White House is, quote, incomplete and insufficient as they are demanding new restrictions on President Trump's immigration crackdown and threatening a shutdown of the Homeland Security Department. That comes from Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries and what they said in a statement just last night. It says that a White House counterproposal to the list of demands nor legislative text and does not address the concerns Americans have about ICE's lawless conduct. That is a direct quote again from that statement that was released. The White House.
The Trump administration may soon reverse an Obama-era scientific climate finding. The Wall Street Journal reports that the administration is planning to reverse the 2009 endangerment finding, which says that 6 greenhouse gases pose a threat to public health and welfare. It would remove federal greenhouse gas regulation emissions standards for vehicles. It would not impact greenhouse gas regulation from sources like power plants as well as oil and gas facilities. A federal judge in California rules in favor of a lawsuit brought by the Trump administration. The judge says the federal law banning federal agents from covering their face is discriminatory since it does not include state law enforcement. The